So in this next section, we're looking at this concept, justiciability, which kind of literally means the ability to put something through the justice system. Now, it's always been seen as a challenge towards economic, social and cultural rights. As was mentioned before, the reluctance of some of the big NGOs to take on economic, social and cultural rights. So they're saying these are issues of development, they're issues of humanitarianism. They're not really issues of human rights, a human rights law system. Now, that kind of view has been refuted, particularly with this concept of justiciability. Because people say that economic, social and cultural rights are justiciable. You can and you should put them through a justice system. But in order to do that, you need to ensure that there are certain standards there. There are certain practices and policies and elements there. These include that there should be a law there in the first place. So this is a challenge for, say, the right to water, because most countries don't have a clear right to water, whether it's in the Constitution or in any other laws. And same with food. There are plenty of laws around, say, the right to housing in terms of tenants' rights and laws against forced eviction and so on. The first challenge of justiciability is making sure there's a law there. The next challenge is making sure that there is some kind of legal body, a tribunal or a court, which can judge on that. Now, this can be difficult because in some court systems, say you're denied your right to food, or people are starving because of some destruction of crops or something like that. But then where can those people go to court? Should it be a criminal charge? Should it be a civil charge? Is it an administrative court? But also you need to have justiciability. You need to have a legal body that's going to judge on that. And that can be difficult. Say, rights to food, that the people may say it's not a crime, there's no crime against it. So you can't go to this court. Now, we know that there are, for say, labour violations, you may have a labour court, or it could be criminal, or it could be civil. Same thing with housing. Sometimes there are land courts or housing courts, or it could be a civil or criminal court. So in those cases, it's kind of clear. But for some economic, social rights, there is a question of what is going to be the court that it looks at. And then finally, you've got to, in terms of justiciability, you want to have some kind of decision which brings about justice. The court is going to find, the right decision in that case. So that can be a challenge, like around, say, as we know now in Myanmar and Cambodia, with the amount of forced evictions and people forced from their lands, it's very difficult to get justice through the court systems because they don't address that. Now, that's maybe not so much a problem of justiciability, that's more of a problem of fair trial. But still, you want to make sure that there is a court which is willing to make a decision on that economic and social right to ensure justiciability. Now, these elements are also fairly standard elements around access to justice. So justiciability and access to justice are similar and they overlap a lot. The distinction is, access to justice is a civil and political right, and it's kind of detailed in a couple of articles. And it's really about the rights for people to make sure that they can access a court to find justice. Now, justiciability, though, is about the ability to take a particular right through the legal system. And the challenge here is that some economic, social and cultural rights just don't have that ability. You just can't take them to court in some countries. Now, we can cite some of the problems here, and we've already covered a few of them. We've got a lack of laws in some areas. Another one is often judges are not trained in economic, social and cultural rights. They may be more trained in civil and political rights or criminal aspects of the law. But a challenge can be that judges just don't want to hear them because they don't know about, well, what does the right to food mean, or what does the right to water mean. Another problem is that sometimes this is a debate about who has responsibility. Is it the court and the justice system, or is it the ministry? Say we're looking at people claiming they need a right to housing or a right to access state housing. The judge may say, well, look, if the state is going to build this, it becomes like a budget decision. Does the state have enough money to build these houses? So it's a decision of the ministry. It's not a decision of the court system. Now, this kind of distinction has been criticised. It's not as strong as it used to be. Many judges before said, I don't want to interfere in the process of government. Food, water, housing, these are things that the government should do and the ministries have to decide. But more and more cases now, judges say that, the government really does have this obligation. It's made this commitment, it's ratified this treaty, they should make this, they should be providing housing or food or whatever. Another concern, of course, is judging progressive realization. And what happens now is that progressive realization just tends to not be judged. That judges don't use it. It's not used as a part of the assessing if there's a violation of economic, social, and cultural rights. They tend to stick to the clear violations. Now, another challenge in terms of justiciability is commonly economic, social, and cultural rights are more group rights. And say if there's no housing or if there's no school there, it affects a group of people. It's just not an individual person. Now, some law systems are quite well suited for that. If you've got, say, public interest litigation or class actions, they can address that problem, like at a much more kind of policy level. But some places, say like Thailand, you can't do that. You can't address it. It's all got to be individual. So it means that if there's a group of people who don't have access to education, you just got to pick a couple of those people to make individual claims and take that through the law court. Now, this doesn't mean it's not justiciable. It just means it's a challenge. Now, a final kind of distinction is that often, not all the time, but sometimes economic, social, and cultural rights aren't kind of event-based, like torture and slavery and freedom of movement. There's often like an event actually happens where someone is denied that right. Whereas when you look at, say, people are claiming a right to food or a right to housing, it's not often an event where they're denied, but it's just that the country's getting richer and people are getting housing, but you have these homeless people who, their numbers are growing. So it's not like a single event, or it's not like you can claim against a single person or a claim against a single specific ministry or provider or whatever. Now, that's not all the times, but it means that it is a bit more difficult to determine economic, social, and cultural rights in some cases, which makes them more challenging to be justiciable. Okay, so that's the end of that section.